All right, welcome in on a Monday. The sun is out. It's beautiful here in Berea as the Browns continue to look to improve their roster to get ready for the 2021 season as we bring the wonderful month of March to a close. Nathan Zegura and Emmy, we are going to be with you for the next 2 hours. We've got a lot coming your way from around the league. We'll take a look at some of the top remaining free agents. We'll start to move a little bit towards the draft with Daniel Jeremiah's updated top 50 prospects list. Plus, Steve Palazzolo from Pro Football Focus, the senior analyst, joins us at 1:30 live to recap the first few weeks of free agency with the Browns and around the NFL. And then Gerard Cherry, the co-host of The Next Level, which comes up at 3 o'clock right here on 850 ESPN Cleveland, the three-time Super Bowl champ. He will be calling in on the Fifth Third money line as well to talk about the Browns' free agent moves. And, you know, we're going to start to take a look a little bit about where this team is at, what things are looking like. But first, Gibby, we've got to wish Beau Bishop a happy birthday. Beau, now he's taking the day off. He's living as he should, but happy birthday to Beau.
Shocking development. Bishop, not around. He always Houdinis on the birthday.
Well, he should, as he should. My birthday's a holiday, so I typically have that off, which is good. But it's a great time of year for birthdays. We got Miss K's birthday was Saturday. Had a great time getting out. We went down to Collision Bend, get outside and see some friends and some of our first forays out. And it was beautiful, spectacular day Saturday. But the craziest things, Gibby, I don't know if you've seen this, if you've ever been down there this time of year, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just weird this year. But the Cuyahoga River is just dead fish everywhere at the top of the Cuyahoga, from little to big, and seagulls. There's billions of seagulls having a field day swooping in. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. There were thousands of dead fish out there.
Really?
Yeah.
I was not no idea why.
I didn't know it either. So the guy from Collision Bend said that it's a sign of it's going to be a great walleye season. I don't know what the correlation is. I'm not
Lots
a
of dead
scientist.
fish equals a bonanza.
Yeah, and that this happens every year, and it lasts for about a week where it's like this, and then it clears out. So maybe it's the fish that didn't survive the winter, and they come. I have no idea, but the circle of life, there it was. But we had a great time. Although S, who you hear Beau and I refer to a lot. He's my buddy, Scott Lichtenstein. S Buckeye. Uh-oh, that we just revealed his identity.
Yeah, you did.
S was down there for my wife's birthday, and it ended up being much colder initially than we had expected. So I had to put on a beanie, and the only beanie I happened to have in my car was an old Adidas Michigan beanie. And you can imagine S doesn't like that one bit. And I was like, dude, they're a basketball school. Relax. Like it's not like the Browns right now are concerned about what the Bengals are doing. Why would you're above them at this point? So out of respect to him, it was the only one I had. I turned it around so that the M, he wouldn't even have to see the M. And eventually, as soon as it got warm enough, I took it off, obviously. Well, he, after a few cocktails, decided that he couldn't stand he couldn't even stand being in the presence of that hat anymore, and grabbed it and was like going to throw it into the river, into the Cuyahoga. And Kayla's like, what are you doing? You can't throw that in there. And I'm like, yeah, you can throw it in the river, thinking like no sane person would actually take another person's garment and throw it into the Cuyahoga River. Well, guess what? My hat legitimately, literally sleeps with the fishes. I saw it floating amongst the dead fishes of the Cuyahoga. And then underneath it went once it had absorbed enough water.
Well, I think in that situation, the man owes you a new garment.
That's what I said.
Like, if you want me to support your school, you should buy me a garment now.
And I have, by the way, I own plenty of Ohio State gear. I own plenty of Michigan gear because I'm from California. I have very good friends in the time that I've moved here and lived here for the past 20 years who went to Michigan, and very good friends who went to Ohio State and who support those schools. So I'm not rooted in the hatred, but yeah. And my mom was like, you better get you a new hat. And it was emphatic that he would not. And in fact, he said, I'll only get you a hat if it's an Ohio State hat. I said, whatever. I don't care.
But you owe me a hat.
But it was a valued hat.
You were wearing it to keep your head warm.
That's right.
You politely turned it around So it was facing the other way.
Yeah, which totally unnecessary. We're in our 40s, like we're grown-ups. We should be able to be okay.
Correct.
But I did it to be kind. And now it's at the bottom of the Cuyahoga.
Yeah, you owe me something.
Yeah, S.
Yeah, hey, like I don't know. Maybe you say like by a certain point, I either get a new garment or you're getting muted.
Hey, man.
Like you don't have access to Beau Bishop anymore.
Oh boy,
Maybe
mute
you
him
take
on the
that
thing.
away.
Listen, we had a text trial over the weekend about this with Beau, and Beau said that he thought me wearing that was the greatest troll job of all time because I knew how much it would upset him. The fact is, it just ended up being, we thought it was going to be like 70, and at noon it was only 45, 50, and we weren't in the sun. And it was cold, and so I needed a hat. And it legitimately was the only beanie that was in my car, and so I put it on. So it was not an intentional troll job. And then he said that S was justified throwing in the Cuyahoga River, which I thought was a stunning declaration. But I think he's just feeding into S. But
yeah, I think Beau needs to maybe he needs to be cut off from his Buckeye connections.
Yeah, it's sad. You hate to see it. You don't like it. Nobody likes it. But listen, that's where we are. So yeah, so that happened. But it's just it was a great weekend celebrating my lovely wife. So that was good. And Saturday was so nice. And by the afternoon, it was such a nice day. Gibby, did you get to enjoy the sun at all?
Yeah, I was out with the missus, running around, running a few errands, getting some things done. Had the sunroof open, tanned the bald spot on the dome, and
yes.
It was nice. It was a nice little day.
It was.
And then yesterday was the exact opposite.
What the heck?
Yeah. Well,
Freezing
get ready for
rain?
this week. Did you see the forecast?
Well,
like 70s tomorrow.
Tomorrow. That's when I stopped looking.
And then
well,
the rest of the week, like it could snow by Wednesday or Thursday.
32 on Thursday, Gibby.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm done with this. Now, once you get through this week, looking ahead, it's in the 60s.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
We're recovering. We're back to normal.
We're back, baby. We're back. Right,
But,
rolling right into April, the draft here in Cleveland. I mean, we got a lot going on.
Less than 5 weeks out, buddy.
Jeez. Comes fast. But this year it feels it's certainly in the 9 years I've been here, and that I know you've been with the team as well, the draft's never felt less important.
Which is amazing because, let's be honest, we've called it our Super Bowl for a number of years.
Yeah, they used to make T-shirts about draft.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
They made a movie about it. And
They did make a movie about it. It
featured
was
the
on over
Browns.
the weekend. I watched it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. People don't like it. I think it's fun to watch.
Fun movie.
And it's just fun to watch. Take it for what it is.
Miss K didn't realize she knew she had a cameo in the movie, but that it was Chadwick Boseman that she slapped on the back as he went to go up there. And then she got really sad. We watched some artsy movie that had Chadwick Boseman in it about Ma Rainey's. It won a Golden Globe. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, about a singer and a band in the old days. It was very much like a play. It was good, actually. It was a pretty solid film. Miss K really enjoyed it. Very artsy, but very good.
There you go. What? So did the wife like the surprise? Everything go
well?
Yeah.
She did. We had a lot of stuff rolled out for her. It was really 4 days of celebrating her, which I think she deserves it. But I got to tell you, by Sunday evening, we were wiped.
That's a lot of celebrating.
Oh, a lot of celebrating. We're not spring chickens.
Hey, when you haven't been in the game for the past year, yeah, it catches up with you. You got to pace yourself. You got to work yourself back in.
Yeah, and then this morning I went out there. I got the second shot, feeling good, feeling ready, just excited for the summer to live.
Happy that you're upright because I was like, there's no Bishop.
I know.
I don't know how this is going.
Well, I remember I said I was like, maybe I'll take that Monday and Tuesday off, and then they were already spoken for. So here we are, but we're going to have a lot of fun, as I mentioned. Steve Palazzolo, Gerard Cherry coming by. In case you missed it over the weekend, our Ohio Business Machines Hot Topics, OBM. Ohio Business Machines, the preferred copier provider of the Cleveland Browns with all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. The NFL owner meetings are happening Tuesday and Wednesday. Rules will be discussed in April. The biggest thing coming out of this week is that they are definitely going to a 17-game season, and the Super Bowl is potentially being moved back to February the 13th. Now, that I feel like we have announced this 17-game schedule has been breaking news about 6 different times over the last few months.
Yes.
We all know it's happening.
Yes. I don't understand why there are players around the league that are upset about it when they essentially signed off on it a year ago.
Right, and they're going to miss. You're going to get one fewer, I should say, preseason game. So you'll be down to 3. You'll have the 17 games. I mean, I'm bummed just because our matchup was Arizona, and they're coming here. Yes, the on-air light rush. Huge thumbs up. The on-air light's a hit around this office. Do you know that? Did you know that, Gibby?
That's great.
It's the talk.
Good.
It's the talk of Berea.
Appreciate the fans for sending it in.
It's the talk of Berea, as well it should be. I mean, it brings a lot of joy to a lot of people. Are you following the on-air light Twitter account?
I'm not.
Sad.
Got to earn a follow.
Oh,
Good takes earn a follow.
It's been a pretty entertaining account. Did you see this tweet that came in? And I think it's a fair question. I wanted to ask you about this one.
Oh, boy.
Here we go. So this is from Dan Morris, and he says, not sure if it broke Gibbe's heart or like the Grinch, it made it grow 3 times bigger. Good job, Gibbe. And he was in reference to the light. Is having this light here, did it break your heart? Or does it make your heart 3 times bigger like the Grinch?
I'm good.
Are you just the same as before?
I'm the same as before.
Yes, yeah. Gibby's unflappable, folks. I don't know if you haven't figured that
good.
out.
The on-air light works. You're not tapping on a mic anymore. Great. I have no issues.
Yes. If you haven't figured it out, Gibbe is going to be something. All right. So here, by the way, this comes to us from one of our listeners. Aaron Orr says, winter kill is a term used to describe the loss of fish in winter because oxygen was lacking in a water body. Submerged vegetation and algae create oxygen through the process of photosynthesis, but during the winter, the oxygen is often reduced because ice and snow on the lake limit the amount of sunlight reaching the vegetation. In small, shallow lakes and rivers, the oxygen can be quickly used up by live plants and fish and bacteria. And by the way, that happens. Less tolerant fish species and fish in poor condition overall can begin to suffocate. It's a natural process, and not all results are detrimental. In lakes with high numbers of carp, for example, periodic winter kill can thin out their numbers. So there you go. Winter kill from a lack of oxygen.
Where are they going once they die? Like they're all
floating to
in
the
river.
surface.
Are they going out to the lake or which way?
It did feel like they were going. It felt like they were going. If we were sitting at Collision Bend, it felt like they were going left to right. Which would be
so they're out towards
the lake. Yes.
Okay, so then once they're out there, I mean, I feel like you should be going around and collecting these at some
Circle
point
of life,
and getting
brother.
rid of these.
Circle of life. That's what it is. Listen, the seagulls were having the time of their lives.
I'm sure. It was an all-you-can-eat buffet. They're not bothering you sitting at Collision Bend.
No, and no competition. Like some guy wanted this big fish, and this other seagull kind of gave him a little squawk. And he's like, whatever, have it, dude. There's 30 over here.
Yeah, I'll find another one.
Yeah, suit yourself. All right. As I said, coming up, we've got Steve Palazzolo, 1:30, Gerard Cherry, 2:30. And when we come back, we'll take a look at the top free agents remaining, according to CBS, see if any of those are fits for the Browns. By the way, Trevor Lawrence has declined an offer from the NFL to attend the draft in Cleveland.
Kind of sucks because you know he's going to be the number 1 pick. You'd like to have that, but at the same time, I don't know how many picks are actually going to come here.
Yeah, I don't know either. And look, he's probably saying, let me just get down to Florida. That's where I'm going. I'm going to Florida. Maybe I'll go right on down there. And listen, the Hoff didn't go to the draft. That's the Hoff. So if it was good enough for the Hoff, it's good. Hoff's got carte blanche in my book. So if it worked for the Hoff, fine.
And I think, you know, if you come to Cleveland, there's probably going to be stipulations. You could probably only have X number of people in your party. You know, everybody's got to be masked up, whereas you can sit in your living room and, you know, you're on camera, and ESPN will tell you, well, you can only have like 4 or 5 people. Well, you can have 25 in the room next door because that's basically how last year went.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a lot easier, and it's a lot. I could see a lot of these prospects not coming. It's nothing against the city. It's, you know, you can celebrate in the confines of your own home.
Right, and it's still as we're getting out of this and getting, you know, coming out of you know, the pandemic the best that we can, right, there's still going to be people with travel concerns, all of those things. So we'll see how it goes, but it's going to be a beautiful event here. You're certainly going to have some prospects here, to be sure. And, you know, all the renderings we've seen of the set are really quite incredible. All right, when we come back, we'll take a look at some of the top free agents left and see if any of those make sense for the Cleveland Browns. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on ESPN Cleveland. All right, well, welcome back to Cleveland Browns Daily. Be sure to catch the latest edition of the best podcast available, presented by Key Private Bank, out now wherever you get your podcast or by going to youtube.com/Browns. Clowney joins Gibbs and Gribbs. Hey, that's me, to re-rank the top 10 positions of need with free agency a week in, and USA Today's Mark Schofield discusses his post-free agency.
By the way, I got a feeling the bat signal's going up again for you this week. There's rumors of a mock draft 2.0 coming.
Oh, boy.
I know. I tried to get you out of it. I don't think it's happening.
All right, whatever. I'm ready to do it.
I know you are. You're a team player. Our boss wants it.
Listen, I am a team player.
I know.
There we go. Nothing wrong with that. All right, CBSSports.com has ranked the top 10 remaining free agents, and we'll go through this list, see if any of them we think could be fits for the Browns. Number 1, Melvin Ingram. I would say no. I don't think that they are a scheme fit. It says here the Ravens are keeping tabs on Ingram's market, according to CBS Sports and Baltimorean Jason Lock-Canfora. So that would be a pretty – that makes sense.
So it's a scheme
3-4. Yeah, he's more of a 3-4 outside linebacker, and I think certainly could get to the quarterback. Alejandro Villanueva, no, he's the left tackle, formerly of the Steelers. And then there's Jadavian Clowney. Jadavian Clowney, an interesting one. One of the top free agents. Last year, he didn't join a team until September the 8th. He had a knee injury last season, but he took the meeting with the Browns. And remember, that meeting with the Browns was kind of to be, a meeting. Say, hey, let's sit down, get in front of you. We've never been in a room together, feel each other out. And so they did. They felt each other out and liked that meeting. The meeting went well, and some people have said the Browns certainly were interested in Clowney last year, remain interested in him again. The Ravens, again, listed here as a potential suitor for Jadavian Clowney because they want to help that pass rush.
If you're the Browns, I go back to that. He waited until September 8th to sign a deal. So basically, he wasn't at training camp. He wasn't in. If you're the Browns and there is a real interest on both sides, do you want him in here long before training camp starts? Like, do you put a deadline on when I want you in? Because you coming in 2 days before the season starts, I don't know how much that helps me. I need you to get acclimated with the guys on this football team. And that means probably going through training camp, I would think.
You want him here. Yes, of course you do. You want, because if you're bringing him in, you're paying him and you're expecting him to be here, be in shape, be a part of your program, and be somebody that is going to be a major contributor. That would be the expectation, I think, for Jadavian Clowney coming in and working opposite, obviously, Myles Garrett, along with Tack McKinley and what they could do in that defensive line room. Eric Wilson, former undrafted rookie linebacker from the Vikings, has been linked to the Broncos. I think the Browns are done at the linebacker position. Austin Ryder, a former Brown, again, offensive line. Russell Okung, offensive line. I don't see either one of those being the guys that the Browns would be looking at. Richard Sherman, set to turn 33, five-time Pro Bowler. Look, he played with Joe Woods with the Niners the year they went to the Super Bowl, so there is a tie there. But I think the Browns are looking to get younger and faster at the cornerback position. Now, Sherman's still one of the very best in the league, but I still think you want to get younger and faster there. And you think about the Browns' cornerback room, it's Denzel, it's Greedy, it's Troy Hill. Then you've got, M.J. Stewart and A.J. Green, Brian Allen, Robert Jackson. You really need another guy there. And could it be a veteran? Yes. Would it be a high-priced veteran? I don't think so. So Richard Sherman doesn't make a ton of sense to me at this point, given that he's 33. But maybe he says, look, I'll come here and play for nothing to go ahead and chase a ring with the Browns. Opportunity of a lifetime type stuff. But I would still be pretty surprised if that happened.
Yeah. And I think, by the way, they need a couple more corners. I mean, I think you better be comfortable with 5 to 7 at least. Probably closer to 7 by the time it's all said and done, that you feel comfortable that can play at any point in the 2021 season.
All right, agreed. Number 8, Aldon Smith. Now, he's somebody we talked about, former first-round pick, played 16 games, 5 sacks, 48 tackles, 20 pressures, had a nice season for the Dallas Cowboys. Fits the 4-3. He would be somebody that maybe if Clowney doesn't work, you could see as a scheme fit to be the veteran that you bring into that defensive end room. Brian Poole, an excellent slot corner, probably not in the plans now that the Browns have brought in Troy Hill, and then Ryan Kerrigan, who is, again, another pass rusher, a legend in Washington, four-time Pro Bowler, excellent sack artist, pass rush specialist who would be a sub-package guy, and he's somebody I could see fit in here. He's somebody who could fit into the mold as that other veteran in that defensive end room. So we've got Kerrigan, Clowney, and Aldon Smith from this top 10 that I think potentially makes sense for the Browns still at this point.
Which, again, free agency's not over. Just because the first couple weeks are done, you can make some really important moves for your franchise over the course of the next month and a half with both the draft and remaining free agency. And there could be another groundswell of free agency in early to mid-May once you get done with the draft and you really kind of figure out where can we spend, what can we do, and really kind of taking a look at your team as a whole now that the draft is over and the bulk of free agency. But free agency is definitely not over, and the Browns can make some big moves still.
No, and it seems that because of, if you take a meeting with Jadavian Clowney, it means you still want – that's a position you want to address in somewhat of a significant way.
Absolutely.
And so defensive end, because right now you've got Miles, you've got Tack McKinley, you've got Porter Gustin, and you've got Curtis Weaver, who's yet to play a snap in the NFL. So you really don't have a third guy who has played a lot in the NFL or had really success in the NFL. Porter Gustin gave you some nice snaps last year, but, that's a position where people do miss games, and we don't have that third guy to be a starter in the event that Miles or Tack at this point would miss significant time, or the ability to push, Tack into more of a situational pass rusher role, etc. So I still think that is a huge priority, and I think to that position, while it can also be addressed in the draft, but I think that's a position that feels with some of these names out there, that's where you can find that one-year deal guy who's a veteran to come in, because there are three of them in this top 10 list. Four of the top 10 guys on here, including number one, Melvin Ingram, are edge rusher, pass rushers. Ingram just more of a 3-4 stand-up guy than a 4-3, end that you would be a wide 9 guy in this particular defense.
Yeah. I mean, there's still plenty of things that you need to do. Pass rusher, corner are the two that we're talking about the most, but I still think a little more depth on that offensive line, especially at the tackle positions. A little bit more depth in that wide receiver room. There's still some needs for this football team before we go to training camp at the end of July.
Yeah, and still predominantly on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Totally. Predominantly on the defensive side of the ball, in that defensive end room specifically, and in the corner room. That's what you need. Offensively, you're running it back. Hollywood is back. You're bringing back your top 5 receivers from a year ago. You're bringing back all 4 tight ends, your top 3 running backs, your fullback, your top 2 quarterbacks, your top 7 offensive linemen. The only one who's not here out of your top 8 would be Kendall Lamb. I mean, you are running it back, the likes of which we've never seen, not to mention complete continuity of the coaching staff as well. So you've got an opportunity, I think, to really build offensively, but defensively and offensively too, you're ready to handle an injury on the offensive line. Chris Hubbard can start. An injury on the interior, Nick Harris can start for you. An injury at wide receiver, Higgins or Donovan Peoples-Jones can start for you. We've seen them do that. An injury at tight end, you've got Harrison Bryant and the Chief who can step up. An injury at running back, you've got Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson should something happen with Nick Chubb. An injury at quarter, you got Case Keenum. Defensively, our depth at corner on the outside specifically and on the edge specifically, that's the one position on this team. Those are the 2 positions on the team, period, that you don't have the depth. Safety, you've got it. Linebacker, you've got it. Interior D-line, you've got it. You're 4 deep there with Malik Jackson now and Billings and Jordan Elliott and, of course, Sheldon Richardson. So those are the only 2 positions where you really have anything that you need to do. And we're going to talk about the Browns, where they stand, where this roster stacks up, what Steve Palazzolo, the senior analyst for Pro Football Focus and host of the PFF NFL podcast, joins us next on Cleveland Browns Daily.
more. With
All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily, going now to the fifth third money line, and we welcome in Steve Palazzolo, the senior analyst for Pro Football Focus and the host of the PFF NFL podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at PFF_Steve. And Steve, what do you think about the job Andrew Berry has done here early in free agency, really focusing on the defensive side of the football?
Yeah, I think a lot of good moves. I think they're making smart moves. Bringing John Johnson in, I thought was fantastic. He was one of the best safeties on the market, and a guy that he's had 3 healthy seasons out of 4, and he's had a PFF coverage grade over 80 in all 3 of those seasons, which is excellent. And so you're adding a top-notch, versatile playmaker to the secondary, with guys like Grant Delpit, we don't really know what we're going to get from him, but Ronnie Harrison. So I just love the depth and versatility there. Go get John Johnson's teammate, Troy Hill, a guy more versatility. He was excellent in the slot last year. He could play on the outside. So that, could potentially fill 2 needs in one, which is more outside corner depth and a good slot player. So I love the idea of building that secondary. I like bringing Rashard Higgins back on the cheap. So a lot of good moves from the Browns and a lot of shrewd ones by Andrew Berry.
Yeah, and you like that. And we'll start. You mentioned John Johnson, a guy that I know was in top 25 at Pro Football Focus in terms of the available free agents. And my question for you is, with that versatility, Grant coming back, Ronnie Harrison, we've heard Joe Woods say he wants to play 3 safeties. How do you envision that back end of the Browns defense going this year?
Yeah, so John Johnson is more of a true free safety, but again, I think he's had success lining up. If you play cover 3, you have to play. The strong safety is going to be closer to the line of scrimmage, and Johnson can do all of that. Delpit, I think, is the interesting one because if he's back and healthy, he just needs to cut back on his missed tackles. But he's another rangy player that can play free safety. So now you're talking about somewhat interchangeable players there, and then Ronnie Harrison has also, he's the biggest one of the group, could play that dime linebacker type of position, play in the box. And for, Browns fans that keep saying, hey, we need a linebacker. Ronnie Harris could play linebacker type of snaps, Ronnie Harrison,
yep.
Because of his size and his underneath range. So, again, I think it just opens up the options. It makes it, less important for the Browns to go and, just target a linebacker in the first round or whatever it is. So it opens up all the more versatility with those 3 guys in particular.
And I would imagine it's never a bad idea to take 2/5 of the starting secondary, the number 1 pass defense in the NFL, and say, we're going to bring him in because it wasn't just John Johnson, Troy Hill, who, I know you guys regard as a pretty darn good slot corner.
Yeah, that's the thing. Troy Hill was a guy we loved actually way back in 2014 coming out of the draft at Oregon. We actually had him as a first-round player, even though he went undrafted. And he's had a really nice career. And like I said, he started his career playing on the outside and then played in the slot last year for the most part and has performed well in both areas. And slot corner is a massively important position. You're talking about a guy that's a hybrid linebacker, hybrid pass rusher if you blitz a lot. So they bring options to the defense as well. So Troy Hill has been an excellent player. And you add him and John Johnson, like you said, from that Rams defense that had played so well. And, yeah, it's the right move, man.
You like that, so that's on the back end, and probably still some work to be done there. Do you think the Browns, as you look at their cornerback room with Denzel, Troy Hill, Greedy Williams coming back, M.J. Stewart, who gave some good minutes, especially at the end of the year, and a couple big interceptions, but is that a position where you still look at this team and say, okay, that's one where maybe that could end up being the first-round pick of the Browns now that they still have to address corner going forward?
I will never look at a team and say, don't take any more corners. It is too valuable of a position, and it's a position where you can be good at 3 spots, but if that 4th guy has to play, you could be in trouble. So I'm all about adding depth. And it's also a position where if you hit a home run, I think Denzel Ward is a type that's a home run. If you hit a home run, the payoff is incredible. So I am all for cornerback for the Browns. I'm all for, and I liked Greedy Williams, and I thought, he's going to be a good player, but there's a chance that he might not be, and there's a chance that you can get a better player than Greedy Williams, and that pushes everybody down the depth chart a little bit. So I am all for cornerback as a top priority for the Browns, just because I would say that for probably 30 out of the 32 teams around the NFL.
Yeah, you're right. You can have a lot of GMs say, how many cornerbacks do you need? One more. And that's because it's a position you just need them. The NFL, as you know, becoming a passing league. You need those guys. You need to be able to cover. As you look at the second level, the Browns defense linebacker, Anthony Walker Jr. was probably the big signing in the sense that, he replaces the departing B.J. Goodson. And then Malcolm Smith, who graded out very well, especially in coverage at Pro Football Focus this year, the former Super Bowl MVP. He's back joining that kind of young trio of linebackers that the Browns have. But Walker, always a part of excellent defenses in Indy, and clearly had an impact on Darius Leonard, who seemed devastated over the fact that Mr. Walker was going to the Browns.
Yeah, so you mentioned Malcolm Smith, and I think his grades have been really good for us, and he's just a really good, solid player. Anthony Walker is the only guy that either our stuff just doesn't mesh with what the NFL is seeing in Walker. Or you've got, if Darius Leonard is saying those things, linebacker is one of those positions where leadership and, what you bring to the table off the field is crucial. For Walker, for us, though, hasn't graded all that well, either from a coverage standpoint or from a run defense standpoint. Too many missed tackles, missed assignments from a run game perspective. I thought, he showed flashes in coverage at times throughout his career, particularly 2019, zone-heavy scheme in Indianapolis. And so, again, it's a challenging role at linebacker, so those grades in our system tend to fluctuate a little bit. So I could see a path to Anthony Walker helping out from a coverage standpoint. We've just seen him really struggle from a run D standpoint. So I think that is a downgrade when you look at B.J. Goodson and how solid he's been in that particular area throughout his career.
Interesting. The team's obviously looking for Jacob Phillips to take a step forward, much like Sione Takitaki took a step forward last year. And I know graded, speaking of against the run, was one of the better run-graded linebackers at Pro Football Focus.
Yeah, he was, and that was kind of what I think his skill set was coming out of college, and again I think the Browns linebacking core is just limited from what they could do from a coverage standpoint, or at least they have been over the last couple of years. So Takitaki had those pretty strong splits. One of the better run defenders, one of the worst coverage linebackers in the league. So what it does is it just gives the Browns some flexibility. I think instead of having 2 linebackers or 3 linebackers, you have a few to fill some specific role. So it gives them, again, flexibility and depth. It seems to be the common thread here. And I think if Takitaki's limited to early downs, I think you can really maximize his value.
All right, and we're talking with Steve Palazzolo from Senior Analyst for Pro Football Focus. Steve, let's go to the front of that defense. And Olivier Vernon played very well for the Browns, obviously lost at the end of last season with that torn Achilles. And they bring in Takk McKinley on a 1-year deal. And, very productive his first 2 years. Last year, obviously, a lot of injuries. But even week 1 was incredibly productive against the Seahawks in that one game that he really played a full-time role in. What do you make of him? Obviously, the upside's there, but it hasn't been there consistently thus far for Takk McKinley in the NFL.
Yeah, McKinley was, from a first-round perspective, a bit of a disappointment for the Falcons. He never, in our system, never graded above 70 as a pass rusher. So that's it's about average to above average, slightly above average. So he's been just a mid-tier type of rusher. And I wrote before last year, he's a third pass rusher right now on a team. So I think that's what you're looking at. I think that's the way the Browns paid him. So again, you get him for 1 year, $4 million, and that's what you're asking of him. So I think there's still room to improve, right? But with the idea that, hey, maybe he does tap into some of that first round ability and it's a payoff. So I think right now you're talking about a guy who's ideally not your second pass rusher. You want to get one other player to maybe push him down the depth chart a touch, and there's still room to do that in the draft. But certainly a worthwhile gamble for 1 year, $4 million for the Browns.
Right, a lot of upside, not a lot of downside, but you mentioned that that's the spot. And I think when you look at this defense, we talked about more corners and then somebody else in that defensive end room with Myles Garrett, McKinley, and now you've got Porter Gustin and Curtis Weaver, who was the 5th-round pick of the Dolphins a year ago. We know about the meeting that occurred between the Browns and Jadavian Clowney, somebody they were interested in last year as well. What would you make of that fit with Clowney here opposite Myles Garrett? And what was the profile, even though he didn't have the sacks last year, what did Pro Football Focus think of his performance with the Titans?
Could you imagine a few years ago if you said Jadavian Clowney and Myles Garrett were going to be on the same defense? I mean, it was kind of like the dreaming of J.J. Watt and Garrett on the same D. But, Clowney is this guy who has never been as good of a pass rusher as his physical ability or skills would make you think, right? He's never been that quote-unquote 15 sack guy. But he didn't have sacks last year, but he was still the same solid pass rusher, and he's always been a pretty good run defender. Now, there was some questions about him losing it a little bit this last season in Tennessee and, just not being nearly as productive. But I think he's another worthwhile gamble as long as the expectations are set properly. He's not Myles Garrett. He's never actually rushed the passer at Myles Garrett level. But can he provide an Olivier Vernon type of season? Absolutely. So I think Clowney is absolutely worth kicking the tires on. And again, if he's your number 2 rusher and Takk McKinley drops down to number 3, now you're talking about a trio that can get after the QB. And I love that if you can get Clowney for the right price.
Right, and it seems like that might be one of the things that they're thinking of, right? That putting – because the Browns like to run, as you know, on third downs, a lot of that what they call NASCAR package with the 3 defensive ends. And, yeah, the idea of Myles and a McKinley and as well as a Clowney out there certainly would seem pretty enticing in terms of their ability to get to the quarterback. What do you make of if it isn't Clowney? There are guys out there, Ryan Kerrigan, who's been a very productive pass rusher in his career. Aldon Smith, who I thought played pretty darn well and kind of miraculously so considering a 5-year layoff from the NFL as veterans. Because it feels like you need another guy with experience in that room to try to be what, Vernon or maybe a combination of McKinley and that person to give you what Vernon did a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan Kerrigan is probably a little bit past his time as far as, being able to rely upon him. Aldon Smith is definitely an interesting one. He I don't know if he completely peaked early for the Cowboys, but certainly showed, after multiple years away from the game, he could still get after the QB. So I think Aldon Smith would be an interesting one. And I think, where the Browns pick in the draft, there could be some value there too, because there isn't a Myles Garrett in this draft. There's not a Bosa in this draft. The edge class is all over the place. There's a whole lot of just freaky athletes who have been pretty good from a production standpoint, but not, again, that Myles Garrett, Chase Young, Bosa type of level. So I think there's an upside play either late first or maybe even into the second round with some of these edge defenders in the draft. And I think if you get one of those guys and you hit on them, it's there could be a really big payoff at the end of it.
Who would you like if you were to rank those people? Clowney, Aldon Smith, Kerrigan, and maybe there's a veteran that I'm not thinking of that you're saying, hey, you're missing out on this guy. From a veteran defensive end perspective, who's still out there for the Browns?
I'm trying to load up our free agent page. It's killing me right now. I'm trying to see who else. It's definitely of that group. It's Clowney and Aldon Smith. I mean, Clowney definitely number one. And again, I know he's disappointed, and Tennessee fans were ready to kick him out the door, but I think there's still something there with the proper expectations. Aldon Smith, certainly worthwhile. I think Kerrigan's a little bit past. Is Justin Houston? I know he's talking about going back to the Colts. I don't know if that ended up becoming official yet. He's more in that Kerrigan territory for me too, but a complimentary veteran piece if that's what you're looking for.
Certainly. And then, we talked a lot about defense so far, Steve. As we look in the offensive side, have you ever seen a team run it back to the extent that the Browns are running it back, where the only change from last year's principal players on offense is probably your 8th offensive lineman, Kendall Lamb, is the only one who's not coming back? I mean, everybody else is coming back. Well,
they're competing with the Bucs, who have completely run it back as well. But yeah, it is an interesting year because there's a couple teams doing that, and it's funny because it's a comfortable place to be. You look at teams are very comfortable when you say, hey, this is last year's depth chart. This year's it's the same. But the thing about the NFL is your needs change almost daily. And whether it's an injury or whether it's a guy dropping off. So I think there's still some more depth to add. But man, do I feel pretty good about that offensive line situation, the backfield. I'm all about getting as many receivers as possible, but I think with the Browns, with how many 2 tight end sets they run, you don't necessarily need to do that as much. And I love having Donovan Peoples-Jones as the number 4 essentially with that high upside, downfield threat. So yeah, the offense is in a really good spot. Love the fact that they're all coming back, and they've got the luxury of just saying, hey, if a great receiver is there or a great offensive lineman or whatever it is, they can take that player and add to the depth and always take that forward-looking approach.
And that's what's exciting about it, is that for the first time, the Browns are, as you mentioned, going into the draft without looking for a savior, without looking for an instant starter. I mean, you can roll out what you've got right now and feel pretty good about it. Obviously, as we said, you want to have a little more depth at corner and another guy in the defensive end room, but you've got quite a bit of a complete roster, which is not something we're used to, not to mention picking 26. So as you kind of look towards the draft and know where the Browns are picking, what do you see, kind of from a corner perspective or an edge perspective, or maybe even, maybe it's a receiver as you look to some succession planning kind of at that end of that first round? What stands out to you as maybe a sweet spot or even a name or two that you guys like at Pro Football Focus?
I would take all the receivers all the time. Just always try to upgrade there. But, yeah, it's a great place to be. Look, you want to fill your needs in free agency. The Browns don't have a ton going into the draft, so that's fantastic. I think from a corner perspective, whether it's Greg Newsome from Northwestern, he just moved up to 21 on our most recent draft board. As a corner, I think Caleb Farley is the tricky one because he was our number 1 corner for a while. He's got some off-field, lower back injuries and some question marks. He could be an absolute steal if you talk about an upside play, because he just dropped to 27 on our board, and I don't know if NFL is on with that as well. But Caleb Farley, I'm sprinting to the podium to potentially take him just because where the payout would be. And again, I think edge defender, we don't have a guy ranked above 22 on our draft board. Kwity Paye from Michigan, Jason Owe, who just broke all workout measures from Penn State at 23, Azeez Ojulari at 25. I think any of those guys would be potential good fits, and just the value for edge and corner is actually pretty good at that back end of the first round.
Which is right, and I think that it's one of those things that fortunately in some ways lines up pretty well for the Browns, because even if you brought in, for example, you mentioned a Clowney or an Aldon Smith, or even you get into the Kerrigan group, that's probably another 1-year guy. And so you would have McKinley on a 1-year deal, that person on a 1-year deal. So it does make some sense to have a young edge guy that you would look at. And I know you mentioned Kwity Paye and Jason Owe and the kid from Georgia. What do you think of the 2 guys from Miami? Because they're 2 that we see a lot, Greg Rousseau, Jalen Phillips as well.
Yeah, Jalen Phillips, there's some rumors about his off-field injury concerns, but I think Phillips is the better player. I think he just ran just now and was fast. He's explosive. I love the way he plays in the run game. Former 5-star from UCLA, transferred to Miami, and just really started to figure it out last year. One of our highest-graded edge defenders. So I like Phillips better as a player. I look at Greg Rousseau, and I hate using the words upside, but I see it for him. He was probably a little inflated I think he had 16 sacks his last season in 2019 before opting out. But he's got to add a little bit of weight. I could see it all, but he's not a 16-sack guy, so to speak. So we just dropped him to 36 on our draft board. So a good player, length and size, and he can get bigger and develop. I like both players. I think if Phillips is healthy, though, he would be an excellent fit, and he looks like just a really good, clean, all-around edge prospect that could step in and play right away.
Talking with the great Steve Palazzolo. And Steve, I'll get you out of here on this one, because offensively, we've talked extensively, exclusively just about the defense. Offensively, if there's anything this team wants, I'm guessing it's speed at wide receiver, right? I think when you play the Chiefs in the divisional round, you saw what the effects of Tyreek Hill, and I'd say you're going to fall into a Tyreek Hill, or even McCole Hardman had vertically and horizontally, and the seams and the opening, the space that they create with that speed. This draft seems to at least to an amateur like me, have a lot of receivers with speed, certainly in the end of the first round, even into the second and maybe third rounds. Who are some of those guys that would be weapons in this style of an offense, running some of the jets and creating some of the speed with their verticals and the deep overs that, Kevin Stefanski wants more chunk plays, guys that would help from that regard?
Yeah, there's speed, there's quickness, there's space players. So Elijah Moore from Ole Miss.
Yep.
5'9", 185, another guy that's on our most recent draft board update as we did it today, up to number 20 on our board. Elijah Moore is just an absolute baller, and he can scoot. So You talk about a complementary piece to what they already have in OBJ and Jarvis Landry. I think Elijah Moore is perfect. Rondale Moore, similar, 5'9", 180, and just crazy explosion. He's really 5'7", but crazy explosion for Rondale Moore. So you're talking about that type of guy that you're just trying to get in space.
Yep.
Moore is going to add a ton of versatility to an offense. Kadarius Toney from Florida, another similar player when it comes to, young receiver that plays in the slot, and you're just trying to get the ball in his hands. So there's plenty of those types. And if you're looking for, OBJ insurance, I don't know if Rashad Bateman is still there at 26 from Minnesota,
Sure.
but I think he's your true outside receiver. Diami Brown, if you're trying to grab somebody in the second round from UNC, he's working out today too, and he's also scooting at 6'1", 185. So there are different flavors of receiver, and I think the Browns should absolutely be looking and just seeing how much depth they could potentially add to that room.
All right, I'll throw one name at you and see what you think of Tutu Atwell. He's a guy that I've been intrigued with, certainly. Just from that speed, kind of fits that same kind of just looks like he runs with a jetpack on his back to me.
He does. He's definitely. I think from our evaluation, he's a step below some of those other guys I mentioned. So if you're looking for that space, I've seen him in the first round in other mock drafts though, and our guys were
I'm looking second round.
Surprised by that.
I'd like to see him in the second, maybe even the early third. We got 2 third-round picks. We can wait. Wait.
Third round would work. I think we're a little bit lower on him than say Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney, some of those other guys. But if you're talking about a perfect Brown scenario and you find an edge, you find a corner, and Tutu Atwell's maybe your third pick or third or fourth selection of the draft, I think absolutely. I think you're grabbing some great value there.
Well, Steve, this is great stuff. And you guys, as I said, you can listen to the PFF NFL podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. Follow him on Twitter at PFF_Steve. Steve Palazzolo, senior analyst for Pro Football Focus. Thanks so much for the time, the great insights. And, man, I got to tell you, I haven't been as pumped for a season as this one in a long time. I can't wait for it to get to September and see this Browns team get back on the field, Steve.
I'm ecstatic for Browns fans, and it's been fun to watch it completely get rebuilt. So appreciate you having me.
All right. The great Steve Palazzolo. Just a reminder, all guests who appear on CBD appear via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns daily a Fifth Third better. All right. Real quickly, before we take our break here at the top of the hour, Gibbe, S is under fire. S has come under siege. And, folks, this show, when we talk about our weekends and what goes on in our personal lives, some of it is real. Some of it's also somewhat exaggerated, embellished when you're, busting the chops of one of your very, very good friends, and S is certainly one of my best friends. It's everybody relax. We just got to relax. He was throwing it back at me, and of course, things happen, wind, etc., gusts. I didn't get it, and now there it is. So let's just all relax. This was not a blatant desecration of the beautiful Cuyahoga River. Everybody relax here. S is a fine man, one of the most upstanding men on this planet, quite frankly. That's the truth. All right. Hour number 2, Gerard Cherry is coming to us at 2:30. We've got a lot more to get into at the top of the hour when we come back. Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 prospect list was updated out today. Some big changes, some big moves on this one. We'll go around the league. And as I said, Gerard Cherry at 2:30. Thank you for listening to Cleveland Browns Daily here on ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into hour number 2 of Cleveland Browns Daily. Nathan Zegura, Jason Gibbs with you. Beau Bishop celebrating his birthday, as he should be. By the way, go ahead,
He's
Gibby.
not celebrating it, though.
What do you mean?
He's got so much stuff going on around his house. The manor is being upgraded.
It's a staycation, Gibby.
That's not fun to me. I don't know about anybody else. If I'm taking time away from work, I am getting out. I am getting away.
I hear you.
I don't like sitting in my house unless it's like summer and I can go play golf every day.
I hear you, but at the same time, it also can be, it's sometimes it's nice to be. A staycation can be quite nice, I think, Gibby.
I beg to differ.
Well, geez.
Not in favor of the staycation.
So you do. I think it's a wonderful thing. I like a great staycation. I'm not afraid of it.
I mean, it's fine. If I have to, I will. But
Sure.
I'm just saying,
It's also a lot cheaper than getting on a plane and booking a resort and all
I
that.
don't know.
And sometimes you can do what you want to do. What if you could, you wouldn't mind, you're saying you wouldn't be happy if you had a couple days off, you just went out and played golf and you hung out and treated it like a vacation, but they had a free room and your own bed.
yeah, that's fine. I'm fine. In the summer, if I can play golf. But, the whole
Sure.
staycation in January and February, I've never understood. I'm not taking time off just to sit in my house and look out the window at 35, 40 degrees every day. That sucks.
True.
Yeah, I have no interest in that.
Same. No, I hear you. No, that's when you have to get out. That's right. That's the time to go. But you have a nice little summer staycation. Anyway, I hope Bo's living. I hope he's thriving.
I hope
he deserves
is
to
too.
be
I'm
thriving.
a little concerned he's not. That's why I said what I said. I'm a little concerned he's not.
It's nice. I'm glad that you are. You're looking out for him.
I mean, is Bootsy ruling the roost with Dad home?
He is bold. He is the bold. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. If you are injured at work, call the Workers' Compensation Lawyers at 1-800-ELK, Ohio for a free case review. Elk and Elk, proud partners of the Cleveland Browns. We told you at the top, Gibby, Daniel Jeremiah just released his new updated top 50 prospects for the NFL draft. And there are some changes. There are some changes in this one. Now, not only are there changes, but he also had something that I thought was very interesting. I don't know if you saw this today, but he said Sam Darnold would be his third-rated quarterback prospect in this draft.
Correct.
Ahead of Trey Lance, ahead of Justin Fields, behind Zach Wilson, who is second, and obviously Trevor Lawrence, who is first. And many people think it's going to go Lawrence, Wilson, 1, 2. So the question would be for the 49ers, do you want Lance or do you try to go make something happen for Sam Darnold? Not with the third pick, obviously, but you would use the third pick to maybe draft, let's call it a Kyle Pitts. And now you've got Kyle Pitts and Kittle as your two tight ends, and he's got Kyle Pitts as the best player, best non-quarterback in the draft. Unique talent with the ability to take over a game, definition of a mismatched player. So let's just take a pause for a second. The Jets are drafting Zach Wilson. Sam Darnold would likely be available for pretty cheap. But now, would you trade 3 ones in essence to go get Kyle Pitts?
I don't think that makes a whole lot of
Does
sense.
that play with your fan base? Does that play with anybody? That I don't know. That's the question that I think that they need to – that's the one that needs to be worked out. My guess is no is the answer. But just think for a second, if the Niners also thought Sam Darnold could be really good, you put Pitts and Kittle on the field together with their ability to run the ball, with Brandon Ayuk, who's the first-round receiver last year, with Deebo Samuel, that's all of a sudden a pretty – how do you match up with that offense? I don't know that you do. And that's an interesting thing. And I'm just going back, like, if you could get Darnold, who would come significantly cheaper, and get Pitts, or you'd have the ability to maybe move from 3 to 5 if somebody wanted, or somebody comes up, you could get a big haul back. Interesting. I think you make that move obviously for a quarterback, but I was surprised to see Jeremiah say that, and clearly he likes what he saw from Darnold's tape, but Some people worry, can they be rehabilitated? And then you say, well, look at what Ryan Tannehill did when he got with good coaching and how he's become an upper echelon quarterback in the NFL. And it's a system that is incredibly quarterback friendly with one of the best offensive minds in the league. And if you gave him a Kittle-Pitts combo, I think we could all be pretty good quarterbacks in that offense.
So Darnold's under contract for year 4. I don't know if they picked up the option yet for year 5.
I'm sure.
You could potentially have him for 2 years if you traded for him.
Right, at a relative bargain.
If you're the Jets, what are you looking for that?
If you draft Wilson, right? What is his value? What did Miami got Rosen for what? Like a third or a fourth?
You're talking about a guy who was like a top 10 pick, and
so was Rosen.
Yeah. And you can't even get a second.
I mean, they might be able to. Who knows? I think Denver would certainly be in the market for him. John Elway loved Darnold coming out. That's going to be an interesting one, where he lands in all of this and what ripples they would have. But anyway, so here's Jeremiah's Lawrence, Kyle Pitts, the tight end from Florida.
I can't believe, by the way, that there's a tight end that's the number 1 position player.
Think about who was in the Super Bowl? Travis Kelce? I mean, how dominant is Travis Kelce for his offense? And George Kittle is right there with Kelce, but if you had Kelce or Kittle and Pitts, because Pitts is a wide receiver, he beat upper echelon SEC cornerbacks on a weekly basis, Jeremiah says. Unique talent to take over the game, the definition of the mismatch. He is great. I mean, they think that he runs routes like a wideout. He is a tight end. He's a stud. I mean, he's regarded as the top position player in this draft, and he is, now number 2 on the board. Jamar Chase number 3, which is why if you're Miami, you're going to have Pitts or Jamar Chase likely staring you at the face at 6 with quarterback going 1 through 4. That's why you like there. Zach Wilson 4, Jalen Waddle, the receiver from Alabama, and you're guaranteed one of those guys. Devontae Smith 6, Trey Lance 7th, up 4 spots. Justin Fields 8th, up 4 spots as well. Rashawn Slater, Patrick Surtain the 2nd, the corner from Alabama. That rounds up the top 10. Micah Parsons 11, Penei Sewell 12, Greg Rousseau 13. Now,
he had a big workout today. I've been watching Twitter lose its mind.
He did, but Jalen Phillips, they're saying, was more of an athletic freak in this workout.
Yeah, the U did not disappoint today. Which, again, when you see all these guys having monster workouts, the first question you ask is, why did this not translate on the field success-wise? Why was the U not a better football team? Where did things go wrong here? But
yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing.
Well, Rousseau opted out.
The first offensive lineman in his top 50 is 9th.
Yep.
The first corner is number 10, and the first edge rusher is 13.
Well, yeah, you've got. I mean, it's loaded. It's quarterbacks and receivers. It's in the top 8 are all quarterbacks and receivers.
Yeah.
Top 8.
And while the quarterbacks have usually been up there,
this is a great receiver draft.
It is an amazing wide receiver. It just speaks volumes when you have one really good edge rusher, he's usually right in the middle of that.
But I think that
group.
also says there isn't a Myles Garrett in this one. There isn't a Nick Bosa or a Joey Bosa. There isn't a Chase Young.
So that question becomes, how deep are those edge rushers in terms of guys that can produce for you day one versus could be a project? Because I think we need a guy that probably can produce from day one.
Which is why if it's an edge, if you don't sign one of the veterans, which is why I think you want one of these veterans, and then you don't have I need somebody, a day one person. Rousseau 13, Kwity Paye 14. That's a name we've heard a lot about since some offensive linemen. Now we get the corners. J.C. Horn 16, up 7 spots, and I know he's a guy that a lot of people like. Big physical cornerback with tons of speed. Caleb Farley, who we just heard from C. Palazzolo, about 17.
He's dropped 12
spots.
He's dropped a lot.
12 spots. Because then he needs to have some surgery.
Yes. That's a fascinating one.
Yeah.
Let him keep falling, because I would take him at 26.
Well, and he was the number 1 guy on the PFF board. He was number 1 in terms of their corners. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the hybrid linebacker safety from Notre Dame, 18. Trevon Moehrig, who's been mocked to us prior to the signing of John Johnson, the safety from TCU, 19. Travis Etienne, the running back out of Clemson, 20. Najee Harris, running back Alabama, 21. Then Jalen Phillips, 22. Tall, explosive, bendy edge rusher who just put on a show in his pro day right now. So that's, again, another one that perhaps the Browns could be looking at, could be interested in, is a guy like Jalen Phillips. Then you've got Kadarius Toney, that explosive wide receiver. Jamin Davis, a linebacker from Kentucky. Zaven Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa, 25th overall. Another running back, Javonte Williams from North Carolina, 26. So 3 running backs there.
Yeah, I think he's got them ranked maybe a little too high on that board.
I don't know that you'll get that many that go that early. I don't think you're going to get 3 first-round running backs. It would be surprise. It would be a surprise to me. Greg Newsome the second, the corner out of Northwestern, tall, agile cornerback. A lot of people like him as well, and he's a name that's been mocked and linked to the Browns at 28th. Azeez Ojulari, who we've talked about, that edge rusher from Georgia. Now here's what he says: slightly undersized edge rusher, split time between playing with his hand on the ground and standing up on the edge. He was a destructive force in the Peach Bowl. Some tightness, lacks ideal size, but made plays in every game I studied. Best suited to stand up on the outside for an odd front team. So what does that mean? A 3-4 outside linebacker. So think Baltimore, think Pittsburgh. He's a better fit for their schemes than our schemes. So it is not, look, you draft players and you make them fit into what you fit what you do to your talent. He's a guy that a lot of people do like, though. Jace.
Well, maybe the Steelers at 22.
Or he could go the Ravens right after us. I don't want him in the AFC North. Doesn't need to be in the AFC
no,
North.
thank you.
Yeah. Jason Oweh, the pass rusher from Penn State, 31st for Jeremiah, and he had that unbelievable workout. Mac Jones, who we're hearing all of this speculation, could he go as high as 3? Could he go as high, all of these things? Well, Jeremiah says no. He's got 32nd on his board.
Well,
32nd.
I think it's interesting, and I had this down for the next one, the next segment, but we might as well talk about it now because this is the week of pro days. This is the show of shows with the U today, Alabama and Ohio State both tomorrow. The bigs of the bigs are hosting the NFL's top management and coaching, and I found it interesting. The 49ers delegation going to Mac Jones involves the head coach and the GM, and I think it's the assistant GM and just a small delegation going to Ohio State's workout with Fields.
Oh, they're happening simultaneously?
Yes.
Oh.
Not necessarily the greatest, but Peter King in his Football Morning in America said the bulk of the 49er delegation will be at the Mac Jones workout.
Interesting. Okay.
Again, maybe I'm sure Buckeye fan will be angry, but I'm thankful we're not in the position of needing a quarterback because outside of Lawrence, I'm not sold on any of these guys.
There seems to be a pretty good consensus around Zach Wilson, too. I mean,
But where did he come from that all of a sudden
he's... You don't need to come... That's how all these guys are. Where was Kyler Murray the year before he went number 1 overall? Where was Baker the year before he went number 1 overall?
Kyler Murray was backing up.
Right, but nobody thought Baker was going to go number 1. Nobody thought Murray was going to... Lawrence is the most recent example. Probably go back to Jameis Winston where it's like, all right, that's the guy who's going to go number 1. Just that's the way the position's been and people showing up.
You're relying on, like, who have you played? Like... North Dakota State QBs.
Trey Lance, I know. It's a risk, but the way that the salary cap is structured, it's a risk that you got to keep taking. And when you're there near the top that you're able to make that move, that's why you do it. That's why the Niners did what they did. They don't expect to be picking 12th to be able to get to 3 again.
Correct. They yeah. You don't want to be picking in the top 5 a year from now.
No, so they don't think that they will be. Some other names real quickly here as we look at Jason Oweh, we mentioned from Penn State, 31. Mac Jones, 32, as you talked about. Joe Tryon from Washington, an edge rusher, 35. Terrence Marshall Jr., the receiver out of LSU, 37. Elijah Moore, who we heard Steve Palazzolo talk about, 38. Asante Samuel Jr., the corner, 39. He was not ranked before, and now he jumps all the way into 39th on this list. Christian Barmore, the defensive tackle out of Alabama, 42nd. Ronnie Perkins, another edge rusher from Oklahoma, 43rd. Kelvin Joseph, another corner. He's out of Kentucky. If you want to like him, avoid the Florida game. It says Kyle Pitts turned him inside out, resulting in big plays because Kyle Pitts is number 2 on this. Rashad Bateman, we've heard about, 48th.
Yeah, it's interesting that Bateman dropped like that.
Yeah, he's got him down 2 spots. That's kind of where he has him. Relies more on his strength and his wiggle after the catch. He's not an explosive athlete. Now, what's interesting is Tutu Atwell went from 36th to out of the top 50 with no explanation given. So I wonder what that's about. And we heard Steve Palazzolo say, I'm not so sure. But lots of good, talented receivers, I think, on day 2, if that's the way that the Browns are going to go. You've got I think that's, if the Browns are looking to add speed to the receiver room, that's the perfect day to do it, right, is day 2. And you got 3 picks on day 2. And so I think it matches up pretty well. But corner edge, there are a lot of good options that should be available to them at 26. And I think a lot will just depend on where they go in free agency prior to that. All right, when we come back, we will go around the league, some of the latest things going on around the National Football League. Gibbe and I will break those down. And then at 2:30, it's Gerard Cherry from The Next Level joining the show on Cleveland Browns Daily. All right, welcome back to Cleveland Browns Daily. Time to go around the league. We'll bring Gibby in a second. A couple of signings, though, have happened while we have been on the air. The Steelers are re-signing their punter, Jordan Berry, and the Cardinals adding veteran safety Sean Williams on a one-year deal. Williams most recently with the Bengals, but Berry back, and he's been a solid punter for the Steelers for a number of years. Berry back with the Steelers. Obviously not a major deal, but certainly he's back there to boom the ball around Heinz Field. You mentioned the pro days going on. Sammy Watkins to Baltimore, as well as they have been clearly looking to address their wide receiver room, I think, very aggressively. Very aggressively.
They couldn't get anybody because no one wants to be they don't want to be a blocking wide receiver.
Right.
They want to catch footballs. And not sure you can do that a whole lot in that system.
Watkins he's on that one-year deal there. He's not going to, I think, look, he brings some speed to them. He can still play at a pretty solid level. But let's not forget Sammy Watkins in 3 years with the Chiefs as 519 yards, 3 touchdowns, 673 yards, 3 touchdowns, 421 yards, 2 touchdowns. Watkins, after starting his first 2 years in the league, 982 yards and 6, 1,047 and 9. Watkins has never gotten back to 700 yards in a season. His best was his year with the Rams, 593 yards, 8 touchdowns on 15.2 yards a catch. The last 3 seasons, 13 yards a catch, 12.9, 11.4. In fact, his yards per catch have decreased every year in the NFL since 2015, 17.5. 15.4, 15.2, 13, 12.9, 11.4.
What's the number of games?
He's played the last 3, 10, 14, 10.
Yeah, I mean, you missed a little time. And
yes.
I don't think he was active for most of the playoff run.
No, and he played, obviously, a smaller role there. But he is a guy that when you look at Sammy Watkins, so much talent coming out of Clemson in his first 2 years. He puts up 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns in 29 games, and it looked like he was going to be on his way to being a stud in the NFL, and it hasn't panned out. And his numbers in that offense certainly won't be great. There's no chance that those numbers will be great for Watkins in Baltimore. But he does bring physicality. He brings some strength, and probably will be, a guy that they're going to count on to win in some one-on-one situations.
At the end of the day, the guy knew the clock was ticking. Draft's coming. It's a huge wide receiver class. It's a loaded wide receiver class. And if he wants to get any more paydays, you better cash in now while there's a team that has an interest in you.
Right. And did you see what the terms were? Did they say what it was?
Have not seen that. By the way, Danny Shelton to the Giants.
Yeah, former Cleveland Brown first-round pick, a one-year deal with the Giants. Still a solid run stuffer, and he goes there. So
yeah, it just says a one-year contract.
Yeah, and I wonder, Baltimore, they were talking about Baltimore and Juju Smith-Schuster, Baltimore and Kenny Golladay, Baltimore and really any big-name wide receiver that was a free agent this year. They didn't land any of them. So you wonder, would they be a team, and they have not historically been a team to move up. But I got a tweet here that sparked that from Johnny Weishar, Johnny Bahama 23. Would they be a team that tries to move up to get one of these stud receivers that are early in this draft?
Could. I mean, I don't know what your capital is these days, but by the way, the Sammy Watkins deal, according to Schefter, worth $6 million with $5 million guaranteed. I feel like that's a lot of money
for Watkins.
Yeah,
that is a lot of money
on a one-year deal. I mean, it's a one-year prove it, but
well, yeah, that's all he was going to get.
But you're only playing. You played 10 games 2 of the past 3 years. Like, you haven't been on the field. I feel like the Ravens had to overpay.
That is a surprise. They clearly were feeling, desperate when you look at the fact that, Willie Snead went off to the Raiders. They needed somebody who could run routes and catch football. He can do that, but his most productive days are behind him. It's amazing. He's only 27. He just has never been what I think we all thought he was going to be. I remember when Dabo Swinney came on this program and was like, don't be that guy. that passes on Sammy Watkins.
So here's the other thing with the Watkins stuff. He is reunited with Ravens OC Greg Roman.
Yep.
Roman was in Buffalo.
Yep.
The year that Watkins
was good.
Had 1,000 yards receiving.
Sure. That was a long time ago, though.
It was a real long time ago, and a lot less injuries.
Significantly fewer injuries, and he just hasn't been able to be all that productive here. But, Watkins opposite Hollywood Brown, that gives them, both of the guys have speed, and Watkins is going to be the one that they're going to count on to win on third down in some contested catch situations. So I see what they're doing. He's going for the money, and they probably do have to overpay receivers, and they probably learned that because, again, he's not going to have a 1,000-yard season in Baltimore. That's just not in the cards for him. Even if everything goes right and he plays 16 games and has, a tremendous season, he's not going to have 1,000 yards in that offense. All right, when we come back, the 3-time Super Bowl champion, the co-host of the next level on ESPN Cleveland, Gerard Cherry, joins us. That's coming up next. Knowing one's limit is important, whether it's a snap count for a football player or a spending limit when you're playing the lottery. So if you like to gamble, set a limit beforehand and stick to it. Want to learn more? Go to keepitfunohio.com for helpful tips on how to keep gambling fun. We go now to the Fifth Third Money Line. We welcome in Gerard Cherry, the co-host of The Next Level, coming up at 3 here on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Speaking of 3, he's a 3-time Super Bowl champion and host on the Browns Radio Network. Gerard, what's going on, man?
What up, Nick, dog? How you feeling, my man?
I'm feeling good. Been in Berea now for a couple months, and a lot of buzz and certainly a lot of action in the last 2 weeks with free agency going. And just want to start there. You know, what do you think of what Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and Paul DePodesta have done in this early portion of free agency to address clearly the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, when you say the term address, they have certainly addressed it. They've gone after cornerbacks. They've gone after safeties. They've picked up a defensive lineman along the way as well. So far as we look at the roster and saying what are needs, and also bringing back key linebacker players as well, defense was an issue, obviously, how many points we gave up last year, and that was seen as a weakness of the team in which teams attack and look for those mismatches would be a better way of putting it. And so addressing that is certainly something that they've done. The thing that you walk away from it saying is they've done it in a very prudent manner, not big splashes or anything like that, but quality players. And that's something you want because ultimately the worst thing you can do as a GM is pay a guy a lot of money and not have him perform.
No, you're right about that. You want to get when you send that money out, you want them to perform at a high level. Let's start on the back end of the defense with something you're very familiar with. Your thoughts on John Johnson?
Well, I love the fact, and I mean absolutely love the fact that you got a guy who was a captain for the Rams on your roster in the secondary as one of the leaders back there. Obviously, he won't walk right in and be assumed to be the leader, and he'll have to earn that right and guys respect and all that. But the fact that considering how vaulted the Rams defense was and has been in the past, and that he played a part in that, and guys decided to put a C on his chest tells you everything that you need to know about him. And I assume that he'll come here with that same level of professionalism, that same leadership, and just that idea about getting after guys and playing at a high level. So that right there alone, you love that because one of the things with the secondary you could say is that they weren't necessarily in the best positions at all times, and leadership was lacking to a degree. So the fact that you have a guy that's a proven leader, played a top caliber defense, now back there is huge.
Gerard, you know, when I was talking with John Johnson, first thing he said, which is something that, you know, I told this to Joe Thomas, and he said, I'd never have heard anybody say that. But when he said, look, why would I chase more money when I could have and miss out on the opportunity of a lifetime to play for the Browns? When you hear a player coming from a team like the Rams, it's been to the Super Bowl, John Johnson's played in Super Bowls, in the playoffs again this year, calling the Browns and the opportunity to play for the Browns an opportunity of a lifetime and you know, taking less money to do so, what does that mean when players have that mentality about your organization?
It means a tremendous amount because, Nate, I was in a situation when I was playing where, hey, dog, where do you want to go to get paid? Where do you want to go to get your pension plan together? Where do you want to go to just relax, chill, play for a season, no high expectations, and just go there and collect checks? Oh, I'm going to go to Cleveland. That was the mentality. That was the mindset. So some years later to hear him say that lets you know that things have gone full circle or made a 180 would be the better way to put it because the direction that the organization was headed where guys simply came there to get paid. So for John to say those words, and I believe he means them, is just a clear sign that things are pointing in the right direction for our organization and that guys don't come here no more with the mentality of, oh, I'm here to collect checks and rest of my laurels and play off what I did 2 or 3 seasons ago.
So what causes that shift amongst players? Is it they look at the success, they look at this roster, you know, there are cool names on this roster, right? You've got an Odell Beckham Jr., you got Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, Myles Garrett, Denzel. Is it the roster? Is it, wow, their coach is the reigning coach of the year? Wow, Andrew Berry seems like the youngest GM ever, is doing a heck of a job there. What matters to players?
Yeah, I know you can give this as an option, but I'm going to say D, all the above. Now, think about it. A couple of years back, I was in a situation, you were in a situation where we were touting, we are going to the Super Bowl based on talent alone. Remember those conversations we used to have about how talented our roster was?
Oh, sure.
And how can we be stopped? And what happened?
Stopped. Not good.
We got stopped. We got denied. We got assaulted. You can name it. A bunch of things didn't go our way. And I was convinced that team was Super Bowl caliber. But, boy, were we wrong. Now fast forward to where we're at right now. you have a Coach of the Year in Kevin Stefanski. So that means when he speaks, guys are going to have to listen. And when he was speaking this previous season, he was putting guys in a position to succeed. Because as a player, that's what you want more so than anything out of your coach. Be consistent with who you are, but more importantly, put me and my teammates in a position to succeed. So right there, you got that going for you. We can't say that necessarily about previous coaches. I'm not going to call guys out and throw them under the bus right now, but you get my point.
Yep.
And then looking from the GM standpoint, you have a guy in Andrew Berry who works extremely well with his head coach, and they're on the same page. It's collaborative, and it's truly that, and there's no backfighting going on that we're aware of or is publicly surfaced, because eventually it does. So the organization, along with Dee Podesta, is in harmony, along with ownership. So all those things speak to stability. And when you have stability, the word gets around. And when you have accountability, the word gets around. And when you win more than 10 games, the word gets around. And when you're in the playoffs, the word gets around. So that's what's going on. So that's why I said D, all the above.
Yeah, and it's for Browns fans, this is a powerful, I think, and this is something, it's a sign of a changing of the times. And last season, we saw that change on the field. This is a sign of a changing perception around the National Football League. But I want to ask you about this because John Johnson also said this. He was the play caller on defense. He was the green dot for the Rams. And I asked him about that because I said, I hadn't heard of that before. Typically, you think of the green dot and you think of a linebacker. And he said, well, we have a lot of different packages on our team, but I'm in every single one of them, and I don't come off the field. And so we thought it made sense to have that continuity, having me call the plays because the linebackers are in a lot of different packages. I think if you look at our roster right now, you would say there isn't a linebacker on this roster that you think is going to play every snap. John Johnson, though, could play every snap. What do you think of a safety as the play caller and how that could fit in, especially in today's NFL?
Well, I've experienced that before where the safety was a signal caller and made the plays, and that's, from a tactical standpoint, that's very astute because think about it. You can have a package where you do not want a linebacker in a nickel and dime situation because that's obviously where they come off the field anyway.
Yep.
So if you have someone, one voice, and continuity with that, and once again, getting back to the term stability. Now, granted, if he goes down, he might be in some trouble, but we're not going to wish that on him or anything like that. But outside of that, no, you love that idea because, once again, it's about continuity and having a guy who, one, knows what the heck he's doing, has no shyness about putting guys in position to succeed as a defensive signal caller. So, no, that makes all the sense in the world. And then you have to scramble around because guess what? Sometimes teams were put in a bad situation because we had to leave that linebacker on the football field knowing it was a passing situation, knowing there was a mismatch with that running back because he was the signal caller. That eliminates that.
Right. You're right. And I think
unless they decide to fool you and go wide receivers that can block in a heavy situation, then you're screwed. But
Bring it on. Bring it on. I'm talking with the great Gerard Cherry, the 3-time Super Bowl champion. And Gerard, when you have now, we've heard so much. Joe Wood say, yeah, I wanted to play, 3 safeties. I was talking with our DB coach, Jeff Howard. He said, get me all the safeties. Well, now you got John Johnson. You've got Ronnie Harrison, who I thought just stood out as an absolute baller in the time that he came here to the Browns and a ball magnet. And you get Grant Delpit back. What does that enable Joe Woods to do when you have that trio of guys? And as John Johnson said, we all have similar body types, and he thinks it's going to be easier to disguise them to opposing offenses.
Well, what it does, it just gives you a wrinkle where, okay, we say this all the time, and it's become a cliche. We're in a pass-happy league. Yes, we are. We're in a speed-happy league because, Nate, when I was playing, you had guys, not to bring up bad names, like Levon Kirkland. He weighed like 275, 285 playing middle linebacker.
Yep.
You don't have those guys anymore playing linebackers. Really guys from 225 to 255 at the most. Now, obviously, there's going to be some anomalies where some guys are still in that 260, 270 range, but that's foreign, to say the least.
Sure.
So when you have 3 safeties who have the ability to be comfortable in the box, can cover a slot receiver, can match up somewhat with the tight end, because that's the biggest mismatch going. If you look out at New England, what Bill's trying to do, he's trying to recapture that mismatch with his tight end signings, because ultimately you figure, okay, if I have a tight end that can run to wide receiver and has that catch radius greater than 1 and the size differential to block as well, then that's a mismatch. But if you have safeties that, one, have a strength, power, speed, and at least in the 6-foot range or higher, then that's a good mismatch. That's a better matchup than the linebacker probably getting outran by that tight end. So it works on so many levels of having those safeties that are interchangeable because, again, you're not worried about, okay, we got to get this guy off the field. You can just straight run your defense outside of having your defensive lineman get a blow here and there.
So you've got those safeties, and now you also add Troy Hill in that slot corner who had the 3 defensive touchdowns last year and the 2 pick sixes amongst those, a Youngstown product. Listen, it seems to me it makes sense. Take 40% of the starting secondary, the number 1 pass defense in the NFL, right, Gerard?
Yeah, heck yeah. You better advance your cause with that because, again, you're addressing the issue. Where are the mismatches being made? And how many times have you seen guys just exploit that nickel corner?
A lot, and that's becoming, I think slot corner is becoming one of the more valuable positions on a defense.
And if you think about it, if you look at the situation, for example, go to Buffalo. What's Allen's security blanket? Going to his slot receiver.
Cole Beasley.
Tom
Sure.
Brady going to his slot receiver. Now, granted, these guys can make it happen on the outside, but the easier pass is in the inside. So by putting, once again, resources towards that slot corner and saying, you know what, we understand that most teams with these option routes are killing our DBs. We need some high-powered, high-pressure, great cover skill guys in that spot. So, your defense should only improve with that. Because, again, through the air, we were getting torched last year. We really were. So this should be a vast improvement. Obviously, easier said than done, but you have to love what it looks like on paper right now.
You're right about that. And so let me ask you, as you look at this back end, and I think that was clearly a big focus. We'll get to the front of the defense in a second. As you look at this back end now, you could I feel like you have 6 starters in Greedy, Denzel, Troy Hill, Grant, John Johnson, Ronnie Harrison. I know that they probably won't have 6 on the field all the time, but I do think probably more often than people might expect with the versatility and the physicality Grant, John Johnson, and Ronnie Harrison have at safety to play, as you mentioned, a little bit of linebacker or a dime backer there. When you look at that group and you say to yourself, okay, the only one, Denzel Ward played significant snaps for us last year, and Ronnie played some snaps for us. Everybody else is new. How long does it take a group like that? Now, John and Troy Hill, they've played together, for years in LA. But how long does it take that group to gel? And, you talk about a transformation. Out of those 6 guys that we named, you really have, 5 new starters. Denzel's the only guy who started for you opening day a year ago.
That's a great question, Nathan, and it varies. Some situations, the gelling process can never take place because guys simply don't hang out together, don't like each other, and the chemistry is simply not there. But when you have guys that are hard workers, that are dedicated to the cause, that put in the work, and are really hungry for something more than just collecting a check or going to the playoffs or having a winning record, but really trying to get to that place called the Super Bowl and hold each other accountable, that chemistry, that camaraderie happens in the course of an off-season, training camp, and beyond. But obviously once the game actually starts playing, there's going to be some moments where, okay, this is what you mean by your body language as opposed to what you did right here. So it takes time, but it's not one of those deals where it's going to be the whole entire season and then finally they click. It can come out the gate, especially if you do have a couple of preseason games in which these guys can work together.
Which is going to be exciting. And listen, the back end always gets helped by the front end, doesn't it? And when their ability to get pressure, take a gamble on a former first-round pick, Tack McKinley. And, when I got a chance to talk with Tack,
area product, dog.
Yes, exactly. We talked about that. That's what I said to him. I said, you did, because I went to college in Atlanta, so I said, you basically did my path, Bay Area to Atlanta and now to Cleveland. And so, but a guy incredibly talented who, he even said, I kind of took it for granted. You've been in a lot of locker rooms. You've seen a lot of successful players. When a guy's got that much talent, if the words are translated into action, that they took it for granted, they realize they can never do that again. What can that lead to? What can that become?
Oh, it can lead to something tremendous. You can finally play to the level of your talent quotient. And when you do that, sky can be the limit for you, obviously, especially if you're lauded as being very talented. But that is the hard part, though, is once you have success, do you go back to resting on your laurels and does complacency sink right back in and you just take it for granted? So he's in a spot where he recognizes that, hey, I'm a boom or bust situation. I'm on a 1-year deal for a reason because I have not lived up to expectations. But the ability is there. And I do like the psychological component that this can play to a player to go out there and rise to the occasion so he can keep longevity and have a career beyond his first contract or 4 or 5 years and break beyond that average of 3.5 to 4 years in which guys survive in the NFL. And, yes, if he's aware of it, he's verbalizing it, he's speaking on it, Now it's just the point to now is just back it up and go out there and really win it, because your livelihood and your ability is literally on the line.
It is, and that's what he said. I have to be successful because I have no other choice, and sometimes that can be a very powerful, motivating factor. I'll leave you with this, Gerard, since we're running back on offense. We'll just focus on the defense for today. I know you got to get ready for the next level coming up at 3:00. What do you want to see over either the rest of free agency or early in the draft to really kind of shore up and finalize what you have on D? Because you could roll out a starting lineup right now, but there might still be some things that you would want to see addressed.
Here's the thing, Nate. This is where I guess I'm a dissenter based upon what I hear locally and on some levels nationally. I'm fine with the young linebackers doing what they're doing and getting better and assuming that they're going to get better, but just simply out of experience and no need to panic there. But I would like to see another defensive end who has the ability to get on the football field and contribute as well. And that would definitely, and I'm talking about the first or second round, that taking place and finding that quality guy. And I'm good with that. And obviously, I could see us doing something with the receiver position, getting someone that can stretch the field with a bigger size and all those things as well. But beyond defensive linemen, and some guys that can work their role from special teams players, the linebacker position, and obviously you never go wrong adding depth in your secondary or your offensive line. We go that route, I think we're solid, because what we're witnessing in free agency is that we don't have a bunch of holes. Obviously, we got some stuff we need to cheer up and fill up. That's a sign of the roster trending in the right direction when you're not panicking through free agency and it's so dependent, though you need quality players to come in.
Yeah, you're right about that, by the way, and maybe this will be a developing story to be covered on the next level at 3, but rumors are Jadavian Clowney started following Odell Beckham Jr. on Instagram. This is where we're at in 2021, folks. People are reading into that to say, does that mean he's coming to the Browns after that good face-to-face meeting, Gerard? You got to love that.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a change in a different direction, because last year he wanted no part of us.
No, but now they had a good face-to-face meeting. And I listen, I think you get in front of Kevin Stefanski, and he's got, the reigning coach of the year. You get in front of Andrew Berry. They're impressive guys to sit in a room with. So maybe things have changed.
Say this in his defense. Yeah, I'll say this in his defense. You, as a veteran, you know better to go to a team that's consistently struggled, because you know more than likely you're not going to get paid. You know more than likely it's going to be a headache and just dysfunction. And why put yourself in that situation if you don't have to? And obviously he's taken the steps of, hey, I'm going to sit back and observe and see what happens. And right now what he sees is what everybody else sees, is that the Cleveland Browns are for real. The Cleveland Browns are a stable organization trended in the best direction, which is north towards wins.
You're exactly right. I love to hear it. Gerard's coming up at the top of the hour. Gerard, thanks for joining us on CBD today.
No problem, dog. Look forward to joining you sometime soon.
Yes, we'll do it again. And just a reminder, all guests like Gerard who appear on CBD appear via the Fifth Third Money Line. Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns daily a Fifth Third better. We'll be back right after this, because there's still so much more to come. All right. Again, so much more to come, and that includes tomorrow's show. Big Gribbs joins us, ESPN's Mike Clay, and more, Gibbe.
Shooker's on board.
Nick Shook.
Shook's
That's
coming.
right. Nick Shook, Gribbs, Mike Clay. That is tomorrow. The next level is next. Big thanks to Steve Palazzolo from Pro Football Focus, as well as Gerard Cherry for joining us. Keep it tuned to ESPN Cleveland all day for the latest on Cleveland sports. The next level, as I said, is next. Thanks, everybody.